Have you ever believed that an ordinary morning, a cup of coffee, a familiar routine could become the starting point of a tragedy no one saw coming? It was a peaceful morning in the suburbs of Sydney, sunlight breaking through the mist, birdsong echoing in the air until everything shattered with the sound of gunfire. When people rushed to the scene, what they saw wasn't an accident. It was a nightmare made real. Inside the car sat a man, slumped over the steering wheel, blood soaking through the driver's seat. Beside him, his 2-year-old son screamed and cried, calling out for his father in desperation. No one could understand what had just happened. Who would commit such a cold-blooded act? And why would a seemingly ordinary man, with no enemies or debts, become the target of an execution-style killing in broad daylight? Every clue, every hidden layer of this shocking case will be uncovered in today's episode. If you enjoy investigative crime stories like this one, make sure to like and share this video with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to Vietnamese Case Files to follow us on future journeys into the world's most haunting criminal mysteries. At 6:30 a.m. on the 2nd of March 2023, just as dawn broke, the quiet parking lot outside Elite Fight Force Gym in Sefton was shattered by a chilling burst of gunfire, bang, bang, echoing through the morning air. Nearby, Stephen Pace, the owner of a mechanical workshop, flinched at the sharp, violent sounds followed by the screech of a car speeding away. Sensing something was terribly wrong, Stephen rushed outside and froze at the horrifying sight before him. A young boy screaming uncontrollably inside a black Mercedes-Benz, desperately shaking his father, who lay motionless beside him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Stephen immediately dialed 000, the emergency hotline, his voice trembling as he reported what he saw. Within minutes, the first police patrol cars arrived, sirens blaring through the morning air. Paramedics were on the scene shortly after and tried frantically to revive the victim right there in the car park. But it was too late. The man had already died at the scene. For the first officers who arrived, the scene was haunting. A middle-aged man slumped in the driver's seat, the windshield and windows riddled with bullet holes, blood splattered across the seat and floor. Beside him, his 2-year-old son sobbed helplessly, crying out, "Dad, Dad," again and again. Even the most seasoned investigators fell silent, confronted with a tragedy that no one at that quiet Sydney suburb would ever forget. The entire area was quickly sealed off. Under the flashing lights of police vehicles, investigators documented every detail with precision. The victim's black Mercedes-Benz was still running, headlights on clear evidence that he had been sitting inside when the ambush occurred. The windshield bore 4 visible bullet holes, while the driver's side door was riddled with at least 6 more. In total, roughly 10 shots had been fired at close range, proof of how ruthless the attacker was. Shell casings littered the ground. Inside, the blood-stained leather seat created a grim, haunting scene. Everything pointed to one conclusion. This was not a simple carjacking, it looked like a planned execution. The victim was a Middle Eastern man in his early 40s. Checking the registration papers, police found the vehicle listed under the name Taha Sabag, 40 years old, residing in the nearby suburb of Greenacre. The identification perfectly matched the victim's physical description. Not long after, as news of the shooting spread, Taha Sabag's wife and several relatives arrived at the scene. They confirmed that the deceased was indeed Taha Sabag, a respected member of Sydney's Middle Eastern Australian community. Family and neighbors described him as a devoted husband and father, showing no signs of any criminal involvement whatsoever. His death sent shockwaves through his family and friends. Many insisted this must have been a case of mistaken identity, arguing that Taha had no enemies and no connection to any criminal networks. That possibility left investigators even more perplexed. Preliminary checks revealed that Taha Sabag had no prior criminal record and was not on any police watch list. In reality, he was a hardworking electrician who also helped manage a small family-run business. Colleagues spoke highly of him. He lived quietly and cared deeply for his family. Given this background, such a brutal professional-style execution made no sense if viewed as a personal dispute. The victim's identity was now confirmed, but a larger mystery emerged. If Taha Sabag was merely an unintended target, then who was the real person the gunman meant to eliminate? That question drove investigators to dig deeper, determined to uncover the hidden truth behind the morning murder in Sefton. At that moment, police placed their first hope in the victim's 12-year-old son, the only eyewitness. The boy was physically unharmed, but deeply traumatized after witnessing the murder. Officers quickly removed him from the vehicle and tried to calm him down. Only after some time, once he regained composure, was he able to share the first crucial details. According to the boy's initial statement, he and his father had just arrived at the gym for their morning workout when a man wearing a ski mask, a black hoodie, and Asics sneakers approached their car. Without warning, the man pulled out a gun and fired repeatedly before fleeing the scene. The boy described the shooter as having light skin and dark brown or black eyes. The second witness, Stephen Pace, told police he heard multiple gunshots and then saw a Mazda speeding away from the parking lot. That detail suggested the shooter had an accomplice waiting in the getaway car. Just a few hours later, investigators uncovered a new lead, a burned-out Mazda CX-3 abandoned near Birong train station, only a short distance from the crime scene. Checking the vehicle's chassis number, police confirmed it had been reported stolen only days earlier. This strongly indicated the perpetrators had stolen the car for the attack and then set it on fire to destroy all evidence. It was a classic tactic of organized crime, further reinforcing the theory that this was a targeted, pre-planned execution. The early evidence, the bullet-riddled car, the masked gunman, the torched getaway vehicle all pointed to a professional hit. Detectives realized they were dealing with a high-profile and extremely complex homicide. Although Taha Sabag had a clean record, a deeper investigation revealed that he was acquainted with several well-known figures in Sydney's underworld. At the time, Greenacre and parts of southwest Sydney were home to several notorious Middle Eastern crime networks, and Taha was believed to have casual associations with a few of their members. In other words, Taha might have been unknowingly close to a dangerous circle without ever being directly involved. Police began to suspect that his social proximity to certain high-risk individuals may have placed him in the crosshairs of unseen enemies. As for his presence at the gym that morning, it was entirely routine. Taha was known for waking up early to pray at dawn, grab an almond milk latte, and drive his son to Elite Fight Force gym each day. He wanted to teach the boy discipline and fitness from a young age. That morning was no different. Father and son arrived early and waited in the car for class to begin. Then came a startling discovery. The black Mercedes-Benz Taha drove was almost identical to the gym owner's car. Same color, same model, and even a nearly matching license plate. This led investigators to a chilling hypothesis. Had the gunman mistakenly identified Taha Sabag as the gym's owner? If so, that tragic case of mistaken identity had cost an innocent man his life, leaving behind immeasurable grief for his family. Alongside gathering background information about the victim, detectives also pulled CCTV footage from the surrounding area. They discovered images of a silver-gray Volkswagen Golf appearing near Birong around the same time the stolen Mazda CX-3 was abandoned. Later that day, the same Golf was found burned to its frame in an underground parking lot in Bankstown. Piecing the data together, investigators formed a likely timeline. After shooting the victim, the killers fled in the stolen Mazda, drove to Birong, then switched to the pre-positioned Volkswagen Golf and continued to Bankstown. There, they torched the Golf and scattered in different directions to cover their escape. Using two getaway cars and destroying both afterward showed remarkable coordination and professionalism, convincing police that this was a well-organized contract hit rather than a random act of violence. However, a crucial question remained. How did the killers leave Bankstown after abandoning the Golf? To find out, detectives reviewed CCTV from the underground parking lot. Soon, they spotted a silver BMW parked near the burning vehicle and leaving the area shortly after the fire began. Tracing the license plate, investigators were stunned to learn the BMW was registered to the sister of a Vietnamese-Australian man named Le Nha Andy Pham. Though his name had never appeared in any gang-related files, the coincidence was too significant to ignore a Vietnamese man using his sister's car, seen mysteriously at the very spot where the evidence trail ended. Could Andy Pham be the missing link, the one who helped the gunmen make their final getaway? Undercover officers began surveilling Andy Pham discreetly. They soon learned he had been seen with two unidentified men just days before the murder, men whose appearance closely matched the suspects described by eyewitnesses. From that point, investigators shifted focus from a lone gunman to an entire coordinated crew. Police suspected Andy Pham had played a logistical support role in the assassination, transporting the shooters to the stolen Mazda's hiding place before the hit, acting as lookout or driver, and later retrieving them once the job was done. Background checks on Andy Pham only strengthened that theory. He had no stable employment, yet his recent spending habits were unusually extravagant. This raised a new line of inquiry whether financial motivation had driven his involvement in the meticulously planned killing of Taha Sabag. Investigators decided to obtain a court order for phone surveillance on Andy Pham, hoping to collect more evidence. That covert operation soon led to a major breakthrough. In one secretly recorded conversation, Andy Pham was overheard bragging about his role in the assassination, a slip that would prove invaluable to the case. Alongside the recording, police also noticed a series of suspicious actions by Andy right after the murder. He smashed his phone, reportedly threw it into a lake, and rushed to apply for an emergency passport using false information. To investigators, these moves were the clear behavior of an accomplice trying to erase evidence and flee the country. From March 2 through mid-April 2023, Andy Pham kept moving between suburbs, seemingly attempting to avoid detection. But every step he took was already under the watchful eyes of a covert surveillance team. In one of the intercepted conversations, he said, "My boys took care of him perfectly." Even more telling, Andy mentioned receiving about 20,000 AUD, roughly $13,000 USD, as payment for his part in the plan, and boasted that two of his partners had fled Australia for Vietnam immediately after the shooting. That level of confidence sounded less like gossip and more like a confession. These findings confirm that Andy Pham had not pulled the trigger himself, but had worked in close coordination with the gunman. Under New South Wales's Joint Criminal Enterprise Law, anyone who actively participates in planning or facilitating a murder can be charged as if they committed the act themselves. By late April 2023, police believed they had enough evidence to make an arrest. On April 23, as Andy Pham arrived at Sydney International Airport to board a flight to Vietnam using his new passport, detectives swiftly moved in and arrested him right at the departure gate. Even as he was handcuffed, Andy appeared calm, perhaps convinced he could still beat the charges. What he didn't realize was that police already held a mountain of incriminating evidence. That same evening, Lania Andy Pham was formally charged with murder as an accomplice. He was taken to Surrey Hills Police Station for questioning, but exercised his right to remain silent, offering no useful statement. Still, the evidence gathered from the crime scene, witnesses, physical items, and the recorded conversations painted a clear picture of Andy's role in the plot. The remaining challenge was to capture the two main suspects, but their escape to Vietnam made the pursuit far more difficult and dependent on international cooperation. For months afterward, police continued tracking the fugitives through Interpol, working closely with Vietnamese authorities. Although the men weren't caught immediately, the case files for all three suspects were completed and forwarded for prosecution. By the end of 2023, Lania Pham appeared before a local magistrate's court and was later committed to the New South Wales Supreme Court for trial. Justice was finally in motion, ready to reveal the full truth inside the courtroom. In November 2024, the case of Lania Andy Pham went to public trial at the New South Wales Supreme Court in Sydney. The courtroom was packed, with members of the victim's family seated silently in the front row. Andy appeared impeccably dressed, black suit, white shirt, dark blue tie, though a distinct lily tattoo on his neck drew attention the moment he entered. That tattoo hinted at possible ties to Asian gang culture in Australia. Yet, in stark contrast to his confident bragging in the secret recording, Andy sat motionless in court, quiet and expressionless as the charges were read. Perhaps being caught had stripped away the facade, revealing the reality of a timid, calculating young man. Little was said about his family, though it was noted that his sister had been deeply shocked to learn her BMW had been used in the crime. The trial drew enormous public attention across Australia, both for its brutality and for the haunting detail that a 12-year-old boy had witnessed his father's execution. Prosecutor Christopher Taylor outlined the sequence of events, emphasizing that while Andy Pham did not pull the trigger, he had actively participated and knew of the plan in advance, making him equally accountable under the law. The 12-member jury listened intently as the prosecutor reconstructed the fatal morning in chilling detail. Key pieces of evidence were presented one by one. CCTV footage showing the Mazda and Volkswagen fleeing the scene, images of the sisters' BMW near the second burn site, forensic samples from the torched vehicles, and most damning of all, the secret audio recording, in which Andy bragged about being paid 20 grand and my boys handled the target cleanly. When the recording played in court, many saw Andy Pham lower his head, his face turning red. He seemed to realize that this was the fatal blow to any claim of innocence. One of the most emotional moments came when the court replayed the video testimony of the victim's 12-year-old son. Because of his age, the boy was spared from testifying in person. Instead, the recording of his original police interview was shown. As the room fell silent, several people were seen wiping tears. Taha Sabag's family held one another tightly, their faces etched with grief as they relived the horror through the boy's trembling voice. Stephen Pace, the man who called 000, also took the stand. His voice shook as he recalled the moment he discovered the victim and the crying child. His testimony, along with the video evidence, vividly reconstructed the brutality of the crime, leaving the jury in no doubt about the devastating consequences of the killer's actions. Faced with overwhelming evidence, defense attorney Madeleine Avenel shifted strategy, choosing to partially concede. She admitted that her client had indeed assisted two unknown men on the day of, the murder driving them to and from the scene after the shooting. However, Avenel argued that Andy Pham had no prior knowledge of their intent to kill, portraying him as an unwitting participant caught in a plot beyond his control. The defense attorney painted Andy Pham as an unsuspecting driver, someone who believed he was merely helping friends collect a debt or intimidate someone, never realizing they intended to kill. She urged the jury to focus on Andy's state of mind at the time rather than the gruesome details of the crime. According to her, if Andy had no prior knowledge of the murder plot, he could not be guilty of intentional homicide. At most, he should face charges of accessory after the fact or aiding and abetting without intent to kill. The prosecutor swiftly dismantled that argument. He laid out the deliberate sequence of Andy Pham's actions before, during, and after the crime, emphasizing. The defendant had every opportunity to walk away or alert police once he realized what his associates were doing, but he did nothing. Instead, he accepted payment. That alone proves he was fully complicit in this plan. After more than a week of hearings filled with testimony and evidence, the jury retired for deliberation. It didn't take long for them to reach a unanimous verdict. On the 5th of December 2024, the court found Lania Andy Pham guilty of murder as charged. As the verdict was read, Andy lowered his head while the victim's family embraced, tears streaming down their faces. For them, justice for Taha Sabag had finally, at least partially, been served. In early 2025, the proceedings moved into the sentencing phase. Judge Belinda Rigg reviewed both aggravating and mitigating factors. She noted the severity of the crime, a brazen public execution that had shocked the community and left a child permanently scarred. Though Andy Pham had not pulled the trigger, the judge said his involvement was indispensable to the murder plot. Without him, the masterminds might never have succeeded. Still, the court acknowledged that he was young, had no prior criminal record, came from a supportive family, and had expressed remorse, even while maintaining he was unaware of the plan's deadly intent. After weighing all circumstances, the court sentenced Lania Pham to 18 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 12 years, meaning he will remain behind bars until at least the mid-2032. Upon hearing the sentence, Andy appeared resigned, while the victim's family sat in quiet disbelief. They felt that 18 years was far too lenient for the murder of an innocent husband and father. Nevertheless, the judgment aligned with Australian law, as accomplices typically receive lighter sentences than those who carry out the killing themselves. For the Sabak family, one pain remains unresolved. The 2 gunmen who executed Taha are still free. Australian police have pledged to continue working with international investigators to track down and extradite the killers, ensuring they face justice and bringing the case to full closure for the victims' loved ones. In the end, the case leaves behind one haunting question: who ordered this death contract, and was Taha truly the intended target? If the mistaken identity theory proves true, then somewhere out there, the real mastermind and original target are still waiting for their day of reckoning. Who are they? What conflict set this tragedy in motion? And will the court's verdict stop the cycle of revenge, or will another violent retaliation follow in the shadows? To this day, those questions remain unanswered. Police have not released the names of potential associates, either to protect privacy or to preserve the integrity of an ongoing investigation. Still, the public hopes that with one accomplice already convicted, the criminal underworld will think twice, and justice will ultimately reach everyone involved. The murder of Taha Sabah carries harsh but lasting lessons. Above all, it reminds us to value the safety and normalcy of everyday life, because sometimes a single twist of fate or a tragic coincidence is enough to destroy it forever. At the same time, society must remain vigilant against the dark networks of organized crime and work hand in hand with law enforcement to uncover and prevent sinister plots before they claim innocent lives. This case is undeniably a story of loss, but through it, perhaps justice and awareness can help prevent future tragedies. And you, what do you think? Who were the real killers, and who was their true target? Share your thoughts below. If you'd like to explore more real-life criminal investigations like this one, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Vietnamese Case Files so we can meet again in the next episode, same time, tomorrow. Thank you for watching.